Welcome back to Tea with D. I feel so good right now. The sun is out, it's actually warm. I actually want to be active, I want to do stuff. See, life is all about seasons. And no matter how permanent a phase may feel, everything is constantly moving from one phase onto another. Which brings me to today's submission. Can we talk about healing, please? How do you fully move on from someone or a situation that really matters to you? I was hurt by someone I really cared about and I thought felt the same way about me, but that didn't stop them from hurting me anyway. I've cut all contact and moved on with my life, but this hasn't stopped my feelings from being hurt every time it crosses my mind. I know healing isn't linear, but trust me, time has gone by, so ideally I should be over it by now. I've even forgiven the person and I don't want them back in my life, side eye. But how do I get on with my life without this having the power to ruin my mood at any given time? I want to leave it all in the past, but I can't seem to, and reaching out to them is not an option. Firstly, as always, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing this with us. So the first thing that came to mind while reading this was a quote that I read years ago. It was actually one of those annoying WhatsApp broadcast messages that parents be circulating all the time. But I'm not gonna lie, they low-key ate with this one, so just listen. Life is like a train ride. The passengers on the train are seemingly going to the same destination as you. But based on their belief in you or their belief that the train will get them to the desired destination, they will stay on the ride or they will get off somewhere during the trip. People can and will get off at any stop. Just know that where people get off is more of a reflection on them than it is on you. Know and have faith that at the end of your ride, your train will have the right passengers on board, and all the passengers that were on board at one time or another were there for a distinct purpose. Enjoy the ride. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses. I personally know that one of my biggest strengths is resilience, and a big part of that comes from how comfortable I am with the idea that there is literally no guarantee that anything will last forever. Like nothing is permanent. Friendships, lovers, success, happiness, loneliness, everything comes and goes. And being okay with this doesn't necessarily make things hurt any less, but it makes it much easier to move on when and if the time comes. But you have to be so content and comfortable with yourself that even when you have to let go or move on from situations and relationships that no longer serve you, you don't necessarily feel like you're losing anything because you understand that that's just life and things come and go. For example, I really took my time in deciding when I was finally ready to get into a serious relationship, because I wanted to make sure that I was so grounded and comfortable with myself on my own that if the time ever came when I needed to walk away from the situation, I would always gladly choose myself, knowing that I'm not necessarily losing anything. Because one thing that I've noticed is that it's always much easier to walk away when you feel like you have nothing to lose. And from the sound of your submission, it seems like you're gaining a lot more than you'd be losing by moving on from this situation. You definitely dodged a bullet here, and I want you to think about that in literal terms. Because people need to understand that whether it's physical or emotional, pain hurts. Okay? And the more vulnerable you become to a situation, the more fatal the incoming bullet gets. Like, let's say you're preparing to undergo surgery and you start getting really comfortable with the surgeon that was assigned to you. But after your first operating session, you find out that the surgeon has actually been operating on you incorrectly and that their medical license was actually fake. So basically, they're not who they convinced you that they were. You would just be glad that the truth was exposed before they got the chance to do any more harm to your body. The same way, you should be glad that you got to see this person's true colors before they got the chance to hurt you even more than they already did. And that's all the reason you need to run and never look back. Allowing that surgeon to operate on your body any longer than they did would have increased the severity of the damage to your body. Like having that person in your life any longer would have caused you much more emotional damage. Don't think, oh, I have to walk away from this relationship. Think, OMG, yes, I get to walk away from this before it went any further. Another thing that tends to affect the rate at which someone heals from betrayal is that we sometimes find ways to blame ourselves, thinking that you put yourself in that position. For example, I remember when someone did something crazy to me, and I was so upset at myself for allowing that person to think that they could do that to me. Like, I made myself the problem. You need to understand that some people will just do bad things, and it sometimes has nothing to do with you, your character, or your worth. Depending on your personality, different things might make it much more difficult to move on. For example, one of my besties would rather act like that person never existed and just block them. Confronting and acknowledging how I feel is just much less stressful to me. I, on the other hand, prefer to acknowledge that they hurt me and will actually tell them why I can no longer associate with them. And the fact that you specifically said reaching out to them is not an option makes me feel like reaching out to them has maybe crossed your mind a couple times. Hey, I'm not judging you. I would much rather get things off my chest so that they don't weigh heavy on me. Because it's much more difficult to move on from something that you've never actually released. So something that I eventually started doing was making fake messages Like, you know, there's Disney movies where they'll write a letter and then say, oh, you were never supposed to read that, something like that. So basically, I'll record snaps directed to someone, but never actually send it to them, and maybe just send it to myself. That way, I was able to get things off my chest without actually reopening any doors. It's kind of like a placebo. Your brain sometimes just needs to feel like it's getting what it wants, even though it's not really. Because for me, once I've gotten things off my chest and the weight is off me, I'm fully done. I hope that knowing that we're all trying to cope with these same situations makes you feel less alone and more sane. I encourage anyone else who has dealt with anything similar to let us know how they were able to cope in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and especially for your vulnerability. I'll see you next Sunday. Bye!